Hi, my name is Lindsay Anderson and I'm from Minnesota. I am late diagnosed with both autism and ADHD, and I like to include the late diagnosed piece because that means that I lived a large portion of my life being highly masked. That means that my body learned how to do that automatically in order to keep up with the expectations of neurotypicals. So it's when describing my story, it's helpful to describe my life in terms of when I burnt out and the time before that and the time after that. So before my burnout, I was someone who did really well in school. I did really well in high school. When I got to college, I was going to school for my math degree, and I did struggle a lot with that, but I managed to do it through working a lot of extra hours, is what I see now in hindsight. And then I became a math teacher, and I taught at the high school and middle school level for 8 years until I had my first kid. So I'm also a mother of two. And when I had my daughter is when I started to feel overwhelmed in a way that didn't feel manageable, although I was still hanging on to my highly masked life at that point and still just really trying to make everything work. And by the time I had my second kid, my son, is when I decided that it had become unmanageable for me to try to maintain the expectations of both work and mothering. And so I decided to go all in on mothering. At the time, I was thinking to myself, like, this is more important than my job. So if I'm having a finite amount of energy, I want to put it towards learning how to be a good mom. And that being at home with them full time brought me sort of face to face with all of the things that I had learned to do as a kid to mask myself and to keep up with neurotypical expectations. And so that is what sort of got me interested in learning about both autism and ADHD. I was starting to see myself in those things. And that's sort of what I call my burnout, my burnout phase or time period of life is in that stage of new motherhood where I was just like, this is way too much for me. I can't hold all of this. And what happened once I got diagnosed, I was sort of seeing myself within these diagnoses before I got officially diagnosed. But as I sort of went deeper into that, then I was able to accept these characteristics about myself and begin to accommodate myself for those things. That is when I began to feel some relief, and I was able to build sort of more space for my nature, the way that I am, and accommodate for myself in a way that didn't always make me feel like I was on a hamster wheel, just struggling to get by. And so in the space that I've created, I'm now additionally a poet and an author, and I'm a songwriter. And so I think it's helpful to tell the different parts of that timeline, because I know that other people are at different phases within their own timeline, and it can be helpful to hear about what somebody else experienced so that you don't feel so alone. Because I know that's something that is a part of going through this, is that it can feel lonely when you are figuring out what is going on with you and what has happened. So what I have learned about my mask is that it is heavily intertwined with the idea of gaining success both in capitalism and socially. And so the social successes come from me following gender norms. So what that looks like is following society's idea of what it means to be a woman and following that really rigidly. So like we ask women to be quiet, polite, nurturing, flexible. We ask them to be selfless and sharing all the time. And so my body tries to be only that when I am masking. That's one of the ways that my mask tries to achieve success socially. I was angry a lot when I was masking, not outwardly angry. I was inwardly angry, and because I wouldn't allow myself to speak up for myself, because I learned from chronic reactions from the society around me that when I act in a way that is not masked, that is not acceptable to society around me. The ways that my mask tries to achieve success within capitalism is by working really hard, both in school and in a job, and usually working way too much and ignoring my body boundaries and my natural body rhythms. So my mask tries really hard to keep up with society's idea of what a work week looks like. So the 40 hours a week, the general 9 to 5 time frame, those things don't work with my nature, with my unmasked self. And so when I am doing that, I am masking. I am doing something that I'm not. I'm pushing through, and I'm disconnected from my body. So that's the main thing that I would say about when I am masking. I am disconnected from myself and my own nature, my own natural rhythms. And I am instead connected to the environment around me, what the environment around me wants, and I am being that. What it looks like when I am unmasked is basically just more options for how I get to be. So it means that I can be all of the things that I am being when I am masked, but I additionally have space to be other things. So I said that one of the ways that I mask has to do with gender norms. And so if part of my masked self is being quiet, polite, nurturing, flexible, selfless, and sharing, I still get to be all of those things. That's sort of what we like to see in a woman, or what we like to put those traits with women. But I get to, additionally, when I'm unmasked, I get to allow myself to be loud. I get to allow myself to be selfish. I get to allow myself to be rigid and not sharing. I get to allow myself to be opinionated. I get to allow myself to be emotional. That's something that we like to say in a little bit of a gaslighting way to women, right? That they are too emotional. So within my masked self, I don't allow myself to be too emotional. I'm very stoic and I'm unreacting to things. When I am unmasked, I get to allow myself to be emotional. I'm an emotional being. I have very strong feelings. They move in and out of me very quickly. That's my nature. I get to allow myself to be that when I am unmasked. When I am not masked, I'm wearing things that feel good to me and are interesting to me. Additionally, the clothes that I'm wearing are things that feel comfortable. I like wearing baggy clothes when there's a lot of what some people call professional looking clothing that feels so uncomfortable to me, so uncomfortable in a way that like it makes me feel nauseous. So if I am masking, then I am ignoring that. I also then, in regards to the workplace, I get to allow myself to be cyclic in my energy, because that is how my nature works. I don't sustain energy. When I say energy, I mean creative energy. I don't sustain creative energy for 40 hours a week from exactly 9 to 5. That's not how it works with me. I'm much more cyclic throughout the month. I'm cyclic throughout the day. It's a much more, what am I wanting to say? It's a much more fluid way of fluid and unpredictable, I guess I would say, of how energy flows in and out of me and how I'm able to create things. So I might have several days where I need to be very much like inward and resting and not creating things. And I need to be allowed to do that, because when I come out of that, then I have bursts of energy in which I can create a lot in a very small amount of time. That doesn't lend itself to sort of how we neurotypically think about work. So when I am forced to look more neurotypical, when I am masking myself, then I'm not allowing myself to be cyclic in my energy. I'm just forcing myself to try to have energy when I'm being asked to have energy, and that's not how it works for me. So then I start to get physical symptoms, or I start to get angry, or I start to get resentful. And then sometimes I can abandon tasks altogether, but that's because I'm not listening to my natural biorhythms. What I wish everyone knew about the experience of masking is that it is relational, which might sound paradoxical given that it is happening to the autistic individual. But what I mean is the autistic individual is responding to their environment. They're responding to their relationships. They are so smartly observing the people around them, the groups around them, the environments around them, and they are observing what things are liked and what things are disliked, what things are accepted and what things are unacceptable. And they are choosing to be the acceptable things, which is a smart response. But when an autistic individual decides to begin unmasking, what that is saying is that the way that I'm being related to is painful. This is too constricting to me. This traps me too much. This puts me in a box too much. This is not working for me. That's something to be heard, not only about the individual, but also about the environment that they are in. It is saying that the environment additionally needs changing, growing, expanding to be able to hold different ways of being, expanding to be able to hold a wider diversity of how we understand a woman, of how we understand the workplace. So masking is something that, in my opinion, belongs both to the individual but also to the collective. It's a relational thing. It is a smart response to what's happening in society. And so if society is to accept these individuals, that means that it needs to accept the way that they see things and the way that they are expanding how we look at some of these things. Another thing that I wish people knew about the experience of masking is that people who are masking are noticing little or big violences that are happening socially. They are noticing what characteristics get put down. They are noticing what characteristics get made fun of. They are noticing what things seem to invite mean behavior. And the mask is set up to have people treat them well, which is what we all want. But that's not the only way to ensure fair treatment. An additional way to ensure fair treatment is for society to expand the way that it allows women to exist, to expand the way that it allows workers to exist in the workplace, and to let different options come forward for how to do that. So yeah. What would I tell a younger version of me? I would tell a younger version of me that there is nothing wrong with you and you learn in a different way. You are a detailed processor, which means that you are going to be so hungry for the details of things, and that your special interests are going to be really important. You need to have interest in what you're doing. So if you are thinking about how to get a job, which is such a focus of society today, that's okay. You can do that, but you do need to have it linked to your special interest. Otherwise, your brain won't be able to sustain it. And so it's okay for you to choose something that is linked to your special interest. It's also okay for you to switch special interests and to go into something else. There's all sorts of ways to make money. You don't have to work a 9 to 5 job. You don't have to work 40 hours a week. You don't have to live a conventional life. You don't have to wear conventional clothes. You don't have to adhere to gender norms. You don't have to, what else I can say? Basically, just you get to exist however you want, and there isn't a bad way to exist. It's okay to be an amalgamation of things. It's okay to be complex. It's okay to be paradoxical. All of that is okay and beautiful, and however you exist, even if it's outside of what society wants you to be, is okay. So stand in your power, stand in your uniqueness, and allow yourself to be exactly the way you are.